All right, let's jump right in. Today, we are unraveling a massive historical detective story. We're looking at an incredible clash between physical archaeology and written records, and how a century-old mystery etched in stone was finally cracked wide open. It's a journey into 진실로 밝혀낸 고구려 역사, the true history of Goguryeo, revealed through the relentless pursuit of historical facts. So get ready to completely rethink what you know about ancient East Asian history, because this story, it's packed with forgotten empires, dramatic twists, and quite literally, a massive cover-up. We're starting our investigation in Kumamoto Prefecture, down on the Japanese island of Kyushu, at a site called the Chubusan Tomb. Now, from the outside, it seems like a pretty typical ancient burial site, right? But to archaeologists and historians, this tomb is a jarring, absolute anomaly. Why? Because while it's geographically located in the heart of ancient Japan, everything about its design, its structure, and especially its artwork screams that it belongs to a totally different civilization. So here is the million-dollar question we're answering today. Why on earth are 5th century murals from the Goguryeo Empire, which was this massive powerhouse based way up north in the Korean Peninsula and Manchuria, found deep inside ancient Japan? Geographically, historically, this is like finding a puzzle piece in the completely wrong box. If Goguryeo is all the way up north, what is their highly distinct artwork doing all the way down south? Well, when you examine the inside of these tombs, the clues are undeniable. The murals feature incredibly specific Goguryeo stylistic choices. We're talking about figures wearing distinct, brightly colored pleated skirts that perfectly match those found in the Susanri tombs all the way up in Pyongyang. Plus, the ceilings and walls are decorated with astronomical charts, and the sasindo, the 4 directional deities, the blue dragon, white tiger, vermilion bird, and black tortoise. These aren't just generic ancient doodles. These are highly specific elite burial symbols of Goguryeo royalty and nobility. Now, as you can probably guess, this physical evidence shook things up big time. Traditional Japanese historical claims have often tried to date these tombs much later, to the 7th century, arguing that they were built by refugees fleeing Goguryeo after it collapsed. But the hard physical evidence, the very specific fashion of those pleated skirts, the exact architectural style of the stone chambers, points firmly to the 5th century. And the 5th century was when Goguryeo was at the absolute peak of its power. No collapse in sight. To really get why a 5th century date is such a roadblock, we have to talk about the Imna Nihon Fu theory. This is a traditional historical theory which suggests that the ancient Yamato Wa of Japan actually controlled and ruled over the southern regions of the Korean Peninsula during this exact same time period. So admitting that Goguryeo, a northern Korean kingdom, had a powerful physical presence right in the heart of Japan in the 5th century, that would completely shatter this long-held historical narrative. For the longest time, that traditional Imma Nihon Fu theory relied heavily on one primary piece of textual evidence, the Gwang Keto stele. Erected in 414 AD to honor King Gwang Keto the Great of Goguryeo, it is literally the largest engraved stone monument in the world. And for decades, the text carved into this colossal stone was actually used to argue that Japan conquered the Korean peninsula. Obviously, that creates a massive, glaring contradiction with those 5th century physical tomb murals we just talked about. Just imagine the sheer density of information on this stone block. There were over 1,800 characters carved into it. But out of all of those characters detailing the king's glorious conquests, there's one specific, highly controversial sentence that has been the center of a fierce international debate for over a century. It's known as the Sinmilyar Clause. Based on early rubbings taken from the stelae, the traditional interpretation of the Sinmyo-year clause reads like this. Wa crossed the sea in the Sinmyo year and defeated Baekje and Silla, making them subjects. Wa being an ancient name for Japan. If you read it this way, it seemingly positions the Yamato Wa as the conquerors of the Korean peninsula, which perfectly backs up that traditional theory. But wait, remember those elite Goguryeo tombs down in Japan? Something here is seriously not adding up. And this is where our story shifts into true crime territory. Historians and scholars didn't just accept this glaring contradiction. They started looking incredibly closely at the physical stone monument itself. What they uncovered through a literal forensic investigation was absolutely startling. The evidence strongly suggested that the stone monument had been physically manipulated. Let's break down the timeline, because it is wild. In 1883, a Japanese military officer named Sako brought back one of the first rubbings of the stele, which formed the basis of that controversial translation. But in 1898, a scholar named Gi Yonsu visited the stele and made an incredibly accurate rubbing called the Musil Dongbon, carefully tracing the original grooves. Then, jump forward to 1913. Official investigations began, but historical sources indicate that during this time, workers applied literal limestone paste to the surface of the monument, supposedly to enhance the characters for taking rubbings. The smoking gun is actually in the typography itself. The original Goguryeo characters were carved meticulously within a strict vertical grid system. But in the later tampered rubbings, certain characters look completely out of place. Take the character for sea, used in the phrase, crossed the sea. It has a water radical on the left side that awkwardly breaks right across the original vertical grid line of the stone. Scholars argue this would be a physical impossibility for the original master carvers, revealing that limestone paste was deliberately used to alter the shapes of the characters. Thankfully, by forensically comparing the altered stone with Gi Yonsu's ultra-accurate 1898 rubbing, the one taken before the massive limestone tampering, scholars were able to identify and restore the original text. They found exactly 138 characters that had been obscured, altered, or destroyed. This incredible act of restoring the truth is what sources call Jinchilo Batakenin Goguryeo Yaksa, true Goguryeo history brought to light by proving the actual historical facts. So what happens when you fix the text? Well, it changes absolutely everything. When you remove that falsely added water radical, the character for sea reverts to the character for every, or by. The entire sentence flips. Instead of saying Wa crossed the sea and defeated, the restored text reveals that it was actually Goguryeo doing the conquering. The true translation indicates that Goguryeo repelled the Wa at every turn. That fundamentally changes the subject, the victor, and the entire historical narrative of the war. Following this restored text, a totally different geographical picture emerges. Goguryeo wasn't just sitting back and defending, they went on a massive offensive. The stele actually details King Kwangato's huge naval and military push across the sea, pursuing the fleeing Wa forces all the way to Tsushima Island and beyond, effectively securing absolute dominance over the region. And boom, just like that, the puzzle pieces finally snap together. When we connect this restored textual truth back to those physical tombs we explored at the beginning of the explainer, there is perfect logical harmony. Goguryeo murals and high-status burial items are found in Kyushu and Kumamoto for a very simple reason. Goguryeo forces actually advanced deep into the Japanese archipelago during the 5th century, exactly as the untampered Gwangato stele originally stated all along. The implications of this restored text are staggering. It proves that rather than being conquered, the Goguryeo Empire had an incredibly massive sphere of influence. Their forces advanced as far as Honshu, decisively defeated the Wa military, established regional garrisons, which perfectly explains the tombs, and ultimately forced the Wa to surrender and pay tribute. It absolutely cements Goguryeo as the supreme power in East Asia at that time. And just to put King Gwangato's sheer power into perspective, his reach wasn't just limited to the south across the sea. The stele also details massive, simultaneous military campaigns to the far north. Goguryeo forces were pushing deep into Manchuria, striking against the Khitan tribes, expanding their empire in multiple directions at once. We're talking about an era of truly unprecedented military might. It's an absolutely incredible story of how forensic science and dedicated scholarship can rewrite the history books. And it leaves you with a profound realization about just how fragile history can be. If a few altered characters carved in stone, hidden by a little bit of limestone paste, can effectively erase an empire's true reach for over a century, what other ancient historical truths are out there, just waiting to be carefully restored? Thanks for exploring this with me today, and keep questioning the history you read.